sexual orientation, or gender. We stand together with all of us to ensure that we have a better life. Thank you all for being here. I really want to thank as well our coalition partners in all of this. And that includes CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CASA, DC Justice for Muslims Coalition, South Asian Americans Leading Together, Human Rights First, Veterans for American Ideals, Bend the Arc Jewish Action, Amnesty International, Friends Committee on National Legislation, Church World Service, Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, Oxfam America, Polygon Education Fund, MoveOn.org Civil Action, Muslim Advocates, and Dulles Justice Coalition. We stand here today for our family, for our friends, and for our neighbors. We rally here today for our future, remembering the many contributions that immigrants have made, that immigrants are making, and that immigrants will make to make our nation great. We are at our best when we remember that and value and cherish our diversity, our cultural heritage, and the ingenuity and innovation that defines America's strength. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mic check.
Mic check.
All right, that's enough. Thank you so much to everyone for showing up today. Thank you to Asian Americans Advancing Justice for organizing this amazing show of showing up. I want to spend my 1 to 2 minutes talking a little bit about what I think it means to be a patriot and what I think it means to be an American. The night that the travel ban was originally signed, or the Muslim ban as it is more colloquially known, my organization, the International Refugee Assistance Project, had a client named Hamid Darwish who had worked for years as an interpreter for the US military in Iraq, risking his life, finally getting a visa to come to safety in America, only to be handcuffed and detained for hours and hours upon his arrival. We put out a call for people to come to airports, and they showed up and they stood outside the airport and they thought about Hamid and they chanted, "Let him in." All weekend, people showed up to airports all over the country, chanting, "Let them in." A few weeks later, the New York Times wrote a profile piece about the clients in this particular lawsuit, and they asked them, "Why is this important to you?" And the clients told them, "We're so grateful to be in a country where we're allowed to sue the president." And that's what being America means. People showed up at airports, at town halls, and at marches. They're going to dangle shiny objects in front of us and try to distract us, and we are going to keep showing up. Even this guy over here holding the pro-Trump sign, good for you, man, you showed up. And what America is about, regardless of your political beliefs, your race, your religion, or your national origin, or whether you're a cop on a bicycle trying to keep us all in our lanes on the street, is showing up. And we're standing here to say, not only are we going to show up, but when you show up, we're going to make sure you can come in.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Robert McCaw. I'm the National Director of Government Affairs for the Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. Thank you, Asian Americans for Advancing Justice, for gathering us here today. I just want to say that the Muslim ban, it's a discriminatory order, just like the Chinese Exclusion Act was a discriminatory order. And one day we're going to look back at this point in history, we're going to wonder how we got here and how we moved past it. I just want to say, whenever a president attempts to do something to our Constitution that federal law would forbid, that it's up to the people and it's up to the courts to make sure that that attempt fails. The Muslim ban not only affects the more than 100 million Muslims who would not be able to get U.S. visas, but also affects every American Muslim dealing with Islamophobia, and that this executive order was designed to legitimize. CARE's documented more than a 50% increase in anti-Muslim bias incidences since 2016. Public officials like President Trump and are partly responsible for this increase in anti-Muslim bias and hate crimes, as their words and the policies they support, like this Muslim ban, are conditioning Americans to fear their Muslim neighbors. This case today is not only a question of whether or not that this biased executive order discriminates against Muslims and Islam or mentions Muslims and Islam, but whether there's a demonstrable chain of discriminatory intent targeted at Muslims to take away their rights and to challenge their citizenship status. The words of Trump against Muslims, calling for the Muslim ban itself, and disparaging Islam speaks for itself. This order is discriminatory. Moreover, the millions of people who have flooded the nation's airports and gathered around this courthouse and courthouses across the country are not mistaken. We can all see that this administration issued an executive order that was designed to demonize Islam and stigmatize American Muslims. We hope that the court here today sides with the people, that it sides with the Constitution, that it sides with American values, and that it rejects this Muslim ban. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, my name is Noreen Shah. I work at Amnesty International. Amnesty International is proud to join you all here in this fight against the Muslim ban and against the entire agenda of cruel and inhumane policies on immigration that the Trump administration is trying to use to remake this country into one that's governed by bigotry and fear instead of by hope and human rights. I want to share with you today the stories of people who are directly impacted by this Muslim and refugee ban. I want to tell you about people that Amnesty International has talked to, documenting these stories around the world. People like Yemeni citizen Bara Aches, that's not his real name, he's too worried about giving it. He and his wife had to leave their baby daughter in Malaysia in the care of friends. He said it was a cruel choice. He said it was forced upon him. I want to tell you about a Sudanese doctor who was in postgraduate training in internal medicine, separated from his wife and baby in Dubai, where he feared that they would be stuck for months. It was an ordeal and we didn't know what the result would be, he told us. I want to tell you about a Pakistani researcher whose Iranian wife was caught in the ban. He said, it was the most stressful week of my life. And I want to tell you about people here in the United States whose lives were shaken into disorder. People who said that this was emotional turmoil. It made them feel like no matter who they were or what they achieved, they were always going to be labeled as something negative. I want to tell you about a U.S. citizen of Iranian descent who came here as an 8-year-old, who said she went overnight from feeling American to feeling like an invader in her own country. And finally, I want to tell you about an Iranian transsexual who's been waiting 2 years for resettlement in the United States, who's living in fear of harassment and abuse. I cannot stand it anymore like this, she told Amnesty International. I just want to live in a safe place that accepts my condition. There are countless dozens and even thousands of people who are living in fear because of this executive order. Because even though the courts have put a halt on it, they are not sure if the Trump administration is going to continue to fight this fight and leave their lives in jeopardy. For the most vulnerable of individuals who are refugees, what the court decides today or in a few weeks and what the Supreme Court ultimately decides, that could be a death sentence for those vulnerable refugees. We should all be aware of lives that are at stake because of this horrific ban. And Amnesty International will continue to organize around the world with thousands of protesters joining from Brussels to Bangkok against this Muslim ban. Thanks very much.
Americans Advancing Justice, and to all of our allies for being here today. It's an honor to be here with you. I'm Yasmin Taib, Director of Human Rights and Civil Liberties at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. We're here today to stand in solidarity with millions of Muslims and refugees, but we're also here to send a strong message to this administration that we will not tolerate its discriminatory, unconstitutional, and unconscionable policies. This Muslim and refugee ban is reprehensible and immoral. It grossly violates our core beliefs and runs counter to American values. I'm here today as an advocate for immigrants and refugees, but I'm also standing here as someone who fled Iran during the Iran-Iraq War and was welcomed in America. As an Iranian American, someone who is undocumented for many years, I came to America with a dream and a belief that anything is possible. I find it abhorrent and appalling that this administration thinks the American people will accept policies that will discriminate against immigrants, refugees, and Muslims. My own family would be banned from visiting me under this executive order. The United States was built by immigrants and refugees. We have a strong, treasured tradition of welcoming those fleeing violence and persecution. Today, we're grappling with the worst refugee crisis in history, suspending the refugee resettlement program and drastically reducing the number of refugees we welcome will have a devastating impact on the lives of innocent women, men, and children seeking safe haven. Now more than ever, the United States must live up to its promise of welcome. The faith community has been very clear on this. I'm here representing FCNL, a Quaker organization, alongside almost 50 other faith groups, including Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and Sikh organizations. We filed an amicus brief in the 4th and 9th circuits opposing this Muslim and refugee ban. People of faith are called to speak out on this issue. We cannot and will not stand for policies that promote fear and ostracism of our Muslim brothers and sisters. The groups signed on to this amicus brief may come from different faith backgrounds, but we can all agree on the golden rule. We can all agree that we must not abandon people in their time of crisis. The important thing is that we're out here speaking the truth. We all know that this executive order is discriminatory, unconstitutional, and flat out unacceptable. And we will continue to fight it every single day because we know deep in our hearts that America is definitely better than this. Thank you so much.
With South Asian Americans leading together SALT. SALT was born in crisis almost 20 years ago after the attacks of 9/11, and we find ourselves in crisis again here today. It never should have come to this. The courts should not have to be the last line of defense to protect us from discriminatory policies promulgated by this administration with absolutely no accountability. It is a shame that we are here today listening to the Department of Justice, or I should say Department of Injustice, arguing before the entire Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, banning entire populations from this nation. This is the department tasked with upholding our civil rights, and instead they continue stripping them from all of us. Hate, violence, and xenophobic political rhetoric are on the rise, and we cannot pretend that policies like this are not responsible for it. SALT's report, Power, Pain, Potential, released earlier this year, documents over 200 incidents of violence and rhetoric aimed at South Asian, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Arab, and Middle Eastern Americans during the 2016 election cycle. 95% of those incidents were animated by anti-Muslim sentiment, and over 20% of the comments of xenophobic political rhetoric were from our president, Donald Trump. And we've seen over 100 additional incidents logged just since the inauguration. The South Asian American community is the fastest growing demographic in the nation, and we are watching and will hold this administration accountable. President Trump's anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, anti-LGBT, and anti-communities of color executive orders have fanned the flames of hate and have transformed the campaign rhetoric into policies that paint our communities as worthy of suspicion and criminalization. From Muslim bans to increased authority and impunity for law enforcement to the constant demonization of all immigrants, our communities are facing an onslaught. And we say no ban, no wall, no raids. Policies have consequences, and while we continue to track hate, we will also relentlessly demand policies that respect the rights and dignity of all of our communities. The End Racial and Religious Profiling Act before Congress today has been introduced 17 times unsuccessfully, while our members of Congress are willing to stay up night after night to strip our communities from health care, which just happened earlier this week. And we will continue to be vigilant and demand our rights that affirmatively advance an agenda for justice for all of us. We are on the offense, and we will continue to hold this administration on the defense. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hardy Vier. I'm with Human Rights First in Washington, D.C. Human Rights First has existed for some 40 years.
Closer to the mic.
And we exist to fight for refugees, for those who can't fight for themselves, for those who are at the margins of our society. We do this because we have long believed in the rule of law. We've long believed that this country is at its best when it opens its arms to those who need somewhere to go, who are fleeing persecution, who are fleeing violence, who need somewhere to restart their lives, and they come to America. So we partner with lawyers from all across the country to represent these women, these men, these children that are fleeing persecution. We do this because we believe in America. This travel ban does not speak to the best of what we are. It does not speak to the best of who we have been, and it certainly does not speak of what we can become. This travel ban speaks of something else. It speaks of fear of the other. As a Haitian, as an immigrant to this country, I get the fear of the other and I understand something about it, but we are not at our best when we're speaking and making policy from fear of the other. This country was made by immigrants, it was built by immigrants, and immigrants have everything to do with our ability to thrive and succeed. That's our best. And so we look forward to pushing forward values and policy that speak to these best principles of ours. And this travel ban speaks not to individualized security determinations. It's not about keeping us safe. Rather, it speaks to what someone's religion is or where they are from, and it automatically puts them in one big box. And that's not who we are, and it's not what we do. And so, at Human Rights First, we continue to embrace the idea that we can be our best if we think about individuals who need help and who come to this country and to our shores. And we look to the famous poem that Emma Lazarus has at the Statue of Liberty, and we believe there is something to that. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. This is what America is.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Scott Cooper. I'm a colleague of Hardy's at Human Rights First, and also the founder of Veterans for American Ideals. I'm a retired Marine, and so I come to this from a bit of a different perspective. I've never been to a rally before, so this is my first. But I spent 20 years in the Middle East, 20 years in the Marine Corps, 5 years of that in the Middle East, and I can tell you that some of the finest, most courageous, and good human beings I served alongside in Iraq and Afghanistan. And let me tell you, when it comes to refugees, it takes a special kind of courage. In the words of Admiral Stavridis in an op-ed he wrote after the first travel ban, it takes a special kind of courage to grab your 4-year-old son by the hand, put your 2-year-old on your back, offer your wife a smile, and walk 1,000 kilometers across Syria to go to a refugee camp in Turkey. I know many of those, and that's why I'm standing here today. I would tell you this: our values are our greatest strength, our most important treasure as Americans, and this violates what, for me, in putting on the uniform, was what it stood for when I was a U.S. Marine. My own experience in the military started with my first assignment on a ship, which was the USS Midway. And I would like to remind you of a wonderful story about the Midway, which was told to me when I had my first trap on that ship. And it was about Ronald Reagan's final address to the nation, his farewell address. And I'll remind you of that when he talked about the USS Midway off the coast of Southeast Asia in the early 1980s. He said this: a small story about a big ship and a refugee and a sailor. At the height of the boat people crisis, the sailor was hard at work on the carrier Midway, which was patrolling the South China Sea. The sailor, like most American servicemen, was young, smart, and fiercely observant. The crew spied on the horizon a leaky little boat, and crammed inside were refugees from Indochina hoping to get to America. The Midway sent a small launch to bring them to the ship in safety, and as the refugees made their way through the choppy seas, one of them spied the sailor on deck and stood up and called out to him, "Hello, American sailor. Hello, Mr. Freedom." That's what this violates, is what we should stand for. And I hope today that the third branch of our government finds the right decision here.
There's a court case going on inside, and so I think that they need to hear our testimony. So repeat after me. This ban is unconstitutional. This ban is dangerous. This ban is immoral. This ban is un-American. In 1790, our first president, George Washington, sent a letter to the Jewish community in Newport, Rhode Island, pledging that the government of the United States gives to bigotry no sanction To persecution, no assistance. Washington's sentiments echoed those of Thomas Jefferson, who more than a decade before, right here in Richmond, declared that our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions, and that no man shall be compelled to suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief. This exceptional notion of religious liberty championed by Washington and Jefferson is a bedrock American principle. It's what makes America America. It's what makes America great. This core value, a value that brought many of our ancestors to this country's shores and borders, has weathered economic depressions, wars, and terror. It has made us more diverse, prosperous, just, and free. And so if we truly want to make America great, then we must first and foremost reject bigotry and end persecution. My name is Rabbi Michael Knopf. I lead a congregation called Temple Beth El here in Richmond, and we, along with Jewish communities across the country, are dedicated to ensuring our country welcomes all who yearn to breathe free. And I stand with you today representing Bend the Ark Jewish Action, a national organization that's mobilizing Jews across the country in opposition to the Muslim ban and other regressive policies like it. Bend the Ark isn't just fighting this ban in the streets. We're honored to be fighting in the courts by joining Friend of the Court briefs in opposition to this ban, including in the case being heard today. And so I stand with you today to say as loudly and as clearly as possible, this executive order, this Muslim ban, is un-American. The first version was un-American. This second version is un-American. Any version of this ban will be un-American. It's un-American to single out one group for discrimination based solely upon their religion. It's un-American to consider an entire religion guilty until proven innocent. It's un-American to dismantle core First Amendment protections in order to score cheap political points. We are here today to send a message to the President, to his advisors, to his cabinet, and to all the politicians around the country who have cruelly, cowardly, and cynically lined up behind these un-American actions. We oppose this ban. We are here today to tell our nation's judges at every level, we oppose this ban. We are here to assure our Muslim friends and neighbors, the men, the women, and the children who have been made to live in fear, we oppose this ban. We are here to affirm to freedom-loving peoples around the world, we oppose this ban. And we are here to invite all Americans of conscience to join us in saying loudly and firmly, we opposed the first ban. We oppose this ban. We will oppose any ban. No ban ever. We oppose this ban because it is un-American. We oppose this ban because it makes us less safe. We oppose this ban because it hurts our country, our diversity, and the freedoms enshrined in our Constitution designed to protect and cultivate it is what makes America strong, prosperous, resilient, and admired around the world. We oppose this ban because it threatens our future and our children's future. And we oppose this ban because it is immoral. Religious discrimination is immoral. Collective punishment is immoral. It's immoral for those who occupy the highest offices in our land to embolden racists and bigots and xenophobes through plainly discriminatory words and deeds, giving license to acts of violence against innocent people and vulnerable communities. It is immoral to make war halfway around the world and then coldly shut our doors to the millions of refugees displaced by those wars. It is immoral to deny to others the same freedoms, the same opportunities, the same fundamental dignity we would want for ourselves. Just over 70 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of the largest genocide in human history. We know the dangers of bigotry and prejudice. We know where the road of religious discrimination can lead. And we know, therefore, how precious are the freedoms that have long been the cornerstone of our democracy. But this great gift of religious liberty, bequeathed to us by our ancestors, is not inevitable. We, the people, must perpetually work to protect and nurture it. That is why we, the people, are gathered here today. It's why we will continue to gather whenever our freedoms are threatened. It's why we say with one voice, this ban is un-American. This ban is immoral. It's why we say with one voice, you can repeat it after me, no to bigotry. No to bigotry. No to persecution. No to persecution. No to this ban. No to this ban. No to any ban. No to any ban. Thank you, and God bless you.
My name is Rasa Dawson, and I work for Oxfam America. Oxfam is a global movement of people working together to end the injustice of poverty. We work in more than 90 countries taking on issues that keep people poor, like inequality, discrimination, and unequal access to resources. We help people save lives in disasters, build stronger futures for themselves, and hold the powerful accountable. I'm here today because, like you, I was devastated when I heard that President Trump planned to turn his back on 2.5 centuries of American tradition and enact his refugee ban. I'm here because, like you, I know that slamming our doors on some of the world's most vulnerable people will not make us any safer, but instead will harm tens of thousands of people in the midst of an unprecedented refugee crisis. Oxfam is working on the front lines of this crisis around the world every day with people for whom this country's resettlement program is literally the difference between life and death. We cannot and will not allow this vital, life-saving program to be dismantled. So over the last few months, tens of thousands of us have rallied in airports around the country. We've held vigils in front of the White House. We've fought these discriminatory bans in the courts. And we've talked to our friends and neighbors about refugees, helping to fight the misinformation about the vetting process and make sure that people know the truth. And you know what? It's working. More and more Americans are standing up and saying, refugees are welcome here and always will be. But we can't get complacent and we can't give up. So after we head home from this rally this afternoon, let's all commit to 3 things. The first is marching, rallying, and protesting. The second is keep calling and writing our elected officials to keep our doors open to the 1% of the world's refugees who have no other option than to come to the United States. And third, to keep spreading the word, spread facts, fight the misinformation. And together we are going to keep fighting because together we are sending a message to our leaders and we are sending a message to refugees around the world. So please say it with me. No hate, no fear. No fear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Refugees are welcome here. No hate.
No hate.
No fear.
No fear.
Refugees are welcome here.
Refugees are welcome here.
Thank you.
Everybody, my name is Serene Shabaya. I am a civil rights attorney in DC, and I'm here on behalf of the Dulles Justice Coalition and all the airport lawyers who went down to the airports the day that the travel ban was enacted and stood there and said, no hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here, and let them in. I'm here to say that as this fight is going on in the courts, it's also going on in the streets. And the fight on the streets is equally important. And we saw that at the airports. Because when we went down there and we said, no hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here, people listened and the families listened and they saw that they were not alone. We saw people who were standing there having no idea what was going on with their elderly family members who were stuck in there for hours and hours. We had people in other states saying, my family members are coming into Dulles and then they're supposed to come to me and they don't speak English, and what is going on with them? We saw people who had medical problems. We saw people who had family members that became stranded in airports across the globe. We had people stranded in Amsterdam. We had people stranded in Qatar. We had people detained at Dulles Airport. And even as courts were saying this is unconstitutional, we also saw that we were not able to have access to our clients. We saw that people who were inside, who were not being allowed to talk to attorneys, were also being made and coerced into signing away their rights. And that's how they were being sent away from this country. And we stood there and said, and we stand here and say today, this is not right. The only thing that this ban has done is that it has sown a palpable fear and terror and chaos in the hearts and minds of a community of people who belong here just as much as anybody else. And it has sent a message that some people are not welcome because of their religion or national origin or race or other affiliations, and we stand against that. Just as we stood against the first travel ban, we stand against the second travel ban, and we want to say that these families are not alone. Nobody there is alone. We're here to stand with the communities that are targeted. We're here to stand with everybody who feels that they somehow don't belong in this country as much as anybody else does, just because of their religion. And with that, no hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here.
Well, it's a really beautiful day, and it's a really important day in Richmond, Virginia. My name is John Bauman. I'm with CWS, Church World Service. We are one of the agencies that's approved to resettle refugees in the U.S. We have 34 offices across the country, including one here in Richmond. So one of the previous speakers encouraged you to look at one of the briefs that was filed for this court case today, the Interfaith Friend of the Court brief, or amicus brief. And I would encourage you to do that. CWS signed on to that. You can Google Fourth Circuit Interfaith Amicus Brief Muslim ban. I guarantee you it'll be the first one at the top. And a couple of things were said there that we really believe in, and the other nearly 50 organizations who signed on believe in. First of all, we strongly object, and I can hardly believe I have to say this in 2017, but we strongly object to banning entry to the United States based on ethnicity, nationality, or religion. It is really hard to believe, as I said, that we even have to say that in this day and time. As a refugee resettlement agency, we're obviously really concerned about people not getting here. We're talking about the 6 countries that were identified in the second ban. From majority Muslim countries, it's clearly discrimination against Muslims. It's clearly a violation of the Constitution, people's freedom of religion. Last year, of all the refugees that were resettled in the United States, almost a third came from those 6 countries. So not only do we object in principle, but as a practical matter, we're really turning away a lot of people in the greatest need, fleeing the greatest dangers of war and terrorism of any places in the world. On a side note, you know, the previous speaker talked about sowing fear among the Muslim community in particular. I've got a coworker, and I asked him about a month or 2 ago how the Muslim community was doing. And this is a pretty stoic guy. He's not a very fearful sort at all. And, you know, he was one who served, as Scott Cooper talked about earlier, with our troops overseas. But he said, you know, when you go out, if you're identified as a Muslim in public, if you're going to the mosque, you know, you have in the back of your mind just a sense of fear. It's definitely not the same. So I just want to end by thanking all of you for coming out. We are a country that, however flawed we have been in the past in living up to our ideals, we've held on to ideals. We've held on to the importance of the freedoms in the Constitution, and being a nation that's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I'm really glad to see this crowd walking that walk, and let's continue to do that. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lana Heath de Martinez. I'm the Welcoming All Coordinator for the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. And to me, welcoming all means welcoming all. Welcoming all. All are welcome here. We've been chanting this today and we'll continue chanting it. The Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy is calling all Virginians to put your faith into action. All people of faith must stand together against xenophobia and hate that targets our neighbors. The xenophobic discriminatory travel ban is just one more way in which the current administration's immigration policy separates families and severs the fabric of our society. The Virginia Interfaith Center and our faith partners demand a Virginia in which all of our residents are safe and free. Safe to travel with our families. Safe from discrimination and hateful intimidation. Free to pursue our dreams. Free to fully participate in society. The travel ban, much like the deportation dragnet, skewers hardworking people, ripping families apart, and leaving behind a sea of trauma. We are aggressively working to create sanctuary spaces in our localities, our schools, and our places of worship throughout the Commonwealth. And we will not stop until our vision for a welcoming Virginia comes to fruition. The interfaith community revels in our differences but unites seamlessly under the banner of our shared values. Love of neighbor, welcoming the stranger, and caring for the vulnerable and the marginalized. We would not be who we are today as an organization, as a commonwealth, as a nation, without contributions from many different schools of thought and diverse global perspectives. Policies that dehumanize any of our neighbors harm our entire communities. We call on all who support this ban to examine your intrinsic motivation. Fear and love cannot both win. They coexist for all of us in a field of tension. And I'm reminded of Dr. King's words regarding the tension inherent in the collective struggle for justice. Dr. King wrote about negative peace as the absence of tension, where we just keep people out so we don't have to see the problems, and a positive peace as the presence of justice, where we have struggled together to gain equality. Justice and peace do not mean for us the absence of tension. Fear and love will coexist, but cannot both win. And fear hurts our neighbors. It hurts when the administration makes policies born out of bias. It hurts when members of the majority public build walls around our relationships, creating a homogeneous echo chamber where we can be comfortable and alternative viewpoints are securely kept out. Fear hurts when supporters and allies, those of us who are here today, never put more than one toe on the line because of our own fear. This is not the time for a cost-benefit analysis. So often we are hurting our neighbors because we draw lines in the sand and we say, I will only walk with you this far. This is the moment to push through the limits of our love for our neighbors. My tradition tells me that loving my neighbor means walking through every barrier, every fire, every darkness, together. That is the challenge for all people of faith today. Erase the lines and divisions constructed by fear and participate in this collective struggle to bring true peace and justice to our Muslim sisters and brothers. That is how we will begin to truly love our neighbors, putting our faith into action. So you know I have to ask you to do something. And I'm going to ask you, get to know your neighbors. Get to know the people who you share space with. Have the hard conversations. If you're not impacted by these policies, You need to engage people who are supporting these policies and help to address their fear. Support the Sanctuary for All movements. We're working to make our localities and schools and places of worship safe and free for all people. Join us in contacting legislators, marching, holding vigils, and other political actions that stand to uphold not a political party, but our common humanity. Thank you.
Peace be upon you.
And upon you.
My name is Amar Amonet. I'm the Imam at the Islamic Center of Virginia. On behalf of our diverse Muslim community of Central Virginia, I would like to thank all of you, our Jewish, Christian, Hindu, and Sikh neighbors, and all of our neighbors for giving us your love and support. Peace is something we say, but sometimes we forget how to do it. And peace means I see a brother and sister in everyone's face. Our community here in the Richmond area is an American community. Some of us are of Asian origin or African origin or European origin, but we are all united in our love for our home and our neighbors. What makes this home of ours great is that we were welcomed in once upon a time, and we welcome in others. Today we face the greatest refugee crisis in generations. Millions of people, families, are driven out of their homes and in danger of their lives. And here in America, we welcome a few, just a few, a small percentage of those refugees. We're privileged to be welcoming our brothers and sisters here in Virginia. Some of them from Syria or Afghanistan or Somalia and from other places in the world. And they are families who have been living in refugee camps sometimes now for years. And they have been vetted as much as any person ever has been vetted. They're innocent families who deserve our support. We should care for them and we should express that. That's what it means to say, peace be on you. I recognize you as my brother, my sister, and I love for you what I love for myself. So on behalf, once again, of our Muslim community, thank you to all of our neighbors and peace be upon you.
My name is Wallace Adams Riley. I'm rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church just up the hill there. Good to be with you all. What is at stake here is nothing less than our character as a nation, as a people. It is therefore fitting that we have all 15 active judges of the appeals court hearing arguments today. Fitting that for the first time in the court's history, the arguments are being broadcast live. Fitting that we stand in the shadow of Thomas Jefferson's Capitol. Jefferson, of course, the author of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. Yes, the character of our country is at stake. Indeed, we could say the soul of our country is at stake. I cannot help but return to the words of another of our greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln, when he spoke of the better angels of our nature. This day, let us pray for the better angels of our nature. That we see this travel ban for what it is, a dishonest and dishonorable act that targets men, women, and children because of their religious beliefs. A violation of the First Amendment, a violation of the American character. The founders of our country often referred to the Almighty as nature's God. Well, nature's God tells us that we are better than this. that America is better than this. May the better angels of our nature guide the judges of the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals this day. For the sake of all those who would come here and live in peace, and for the sake of the soul of America. Thank you and God bless you.
Everybody, I'm coming on behalf of CASA. CASA is an organization that was founded 30 years ago by refugees fleeing civil war in Central America. I cannot fathom what the U.S. would be without refugees, without diversity, without immigrants. I, someone that 20 years ago crossed the border with my family, cannot fathom what this is becoming if we let it happen. But I am glad and hopeful that we will not let it happen. I see the different faces here today, and it gives me so much hope. And that's the message that I want to give to you today, in the spirit of hope and unity. That the Latinos, the immigrants, are here with you, our Muslim brothers and sisters. And we will stand with you. And that the struggle that we have and the struggle that you have is one struggle. And that this unconstitutional Muslim ban is an attack against all the oppressed people of the world, and this an attack against us all. And I want to say one thing: no ban, no walls. No ban, no walls.